So, what I want to try and describe here is not really going to be news to most of you who click on this, and yet there's a purpose to this. So, they're showing me is all of these concentric circles, all of these spheres, right? All of these planes or layers of density. And here comes the cat to say hello. All of these planes and layers of density and dimensions, all of these different ways of talking about realities that are very close to each other, but not exactly the same reality. There's all so many different ways that we talk about this. And so this is what I'm here to draw. Let me just draw this. So if we imagine this is our Earth reality, right? this is Earth. This is more specifically, this isn't all of Earth. This is what we typically think of as the physical reality. The reality that, I'm sitting here at my desk with my pen in my hand, drawing on a paper, and it's all very real, very solid, very physical, very normal. It's the normal physical reality. You know what I mean, right? There it is. And that is one sphere, that is one plane, that is one layer of density. We could call this 3D. But sometimes when we say 3D, we mean third density, or 4D can mean fourth density rather than 4D or like fourth dimension, right? I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm talking to some people who are just finding my channel. So if you're just kind of very new to this kind of stuff, when someone talks about 3D or 5D, that can mean two things. That could mean the fifth dimension in the very like physics sense, where you're talking about, I'll have to leave that conversation to someone who can describe that better than me. But you know how you have length and then height, and that's two dimensions, and then the diagonal dimension is the third dimension, and then we could sometimes think that the fourth dimension is our experience of time, and then you go to imagine what is the fifth dimension, and that's stuff that we can talk about, like physicists talk about, that we can talk about in a very concrete kind of way. And if you're interested in that, just type into YouTube "imagining the 12th dimension." There's an old video that describes that really well. But so one of the other things that we do when we talk about 3D and 5D and 10D and 12D, we're actually talking about not dimensions so much, but layers of density, right? Fifth density, 12th density, these layers of density. Where down here in what we could call the third density, it's very concrete, it is very physical, it is real, right? And then as we get higher up in density, things become more diffuse, where in the fifth density, things are suddenly like we're in sandbox mode. Everything is, we still have physical forms in a way, but it's not exactly physical like this. Everything is malleable, like you could shift your shape and you could walk through a wall and use the force and make the pen float, stuff like that. Then as you get up into the higher levels of density, things just become less and less physical until there is no more physicality at all, and everything is just consciousness in a very diffuse type of way. Anyway, so that wasn't really what I wanted to talk about, but I guess just for somebody who wanted a differentiation between talking about dimensions and layers of density. So really in this video, I'm talking about layers of density, or what some people would call planes, or what we could just call many different realities. So in one level of our experience, we have our physical Earth reality, and we could really wonder, is the physical Earth reality, are we even all in the same one, right? Are you and me, are we even in the same physical reality, or are we in ones that are slightly different? Like, imagine a guitar string, right? You have it tuned like an E string on the guitar. You have it tuned perfectly. Well, and I mean, what is that's kind of arbitrary, right? We've just defined what constitutes a perfectly tuned E string. But somebody else with a different guitar, they could have it tuned slightly differently. both basically playing an E, but it can just be 1 cent off, right? Just 1 cent off, just slightly. It's still basically the same note, but it's a little bit tuned a little differently, right? Your and my physical realities could be like that. They could be basically the same, but just slightly vibration, a slight, like a very, very tiny vibrational difference, or there could be a very large vibrational difference, and somehow we could still be in the same consensus reality. Getting into the consensus reality, that is essentially, the concept that we are creating all of these realities because we have decided to, because we have agreed upon them, because we have agreed this is where we are, right? The consensus reality, that is sort of a related topic. But I know this is all over the place, but bear with me here and just kind of take this in if this is interesting you. So here we are in the physical earth reality, what we might call 3D, what we might call the consensus reality. There we are. And so what other layers are relevant here? So there are, let's go inwards first. Let's talk about the inner spheres. The inner spheres, right? Inside. And this is where you can, if you're familiar with inner earth, Agartha, right? Again, many, many, many different ways to explore inner earth concepts. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this because I always wonder if I were to just dig a hole, right? What what would I find down there? And here's the thing is that for those of you who don't know me, I've taken quite the journey. I was raised Christian, but very Christian. My grandparents were young earth creationists, so that was kind of my original background. And then I became an atheist for a long time, and I was very, very rational, very, very into evolutionary biology and geologic time, all those ways of thinking. And of course, now I'm quite far into woo-woo land, into personal spirituality, where now I explore all kinds of different ways of looking at everything. So I've spent a lot of time, trying to essentially reconcile some of my understandings here, because on the one hand, I'm very, very, I find evolutionary biology and geologic time, right? Like learning about the history of the physical earth, learning about its physical history by looking at the rocks and, studying it scientifically. I find that those things very compelling, right? They're very compelling to me. I'm very interested in those areas of science. And yet I also believe that there are inner earth realms, that there are inner earth beings, that there are beings in what we call inner earth. And there's all kinds of reasons why I believe that to be the case, and that's a topic for a different video. But I've often tried to reconcile what this means for me, because on the one hand, I do imagine if I were to dig a hole into the earth, I would just find a bunch of rock. I would just find rock, and it would just be a dead physical rock planet, right? With nothing magical or mystical or mysterious going on inside. And yet I also paradoxically believe in all of these inner earth realms and civilizations and the magical landscapes that exist inside the earth. So how can I walk around with that kind of cognitive dissonance? Well, honestly, I don't have any cognitive dissonance because to me, I have this feeling of, well, and I mean, this could make me just sound like a total crazy person, but I know the audience I'm speaking to here, and I know that you guys are more or less kind of, it's not that you agree with everything that I say, but it's that you are just kind of open to these types of different ways of explorations and thinking about things. So yeah, but I don't know, I feel like I'm talking to new people. So hi, new people, if you new people are here. You're definitely here. I feel your presence. So this is how the inner spheres, right? The inner spheres. Because I don't think that this is just one Earth, right? The physical Earth reality, the planet that is a rock floating in space. I don't think that's the end of the story, right? It is real. It is a real physical thing. Earth is a real physical rock, and inside of it is a bunch more rocks and magma and water and all of that geology, right? Geology and biology, they are real. Um, and yet, the inner spheres are also real. They're essentially, like I see them as, it's coming back to that guitar string, right? It's a different vibration, it's a different tuning, or it's a different plane, a different layer of density. It's they're other realms, and they are, even though they are physical, right? They are physical. They are somehow less like abjectly physical than the reality that you and me are probably experiencing on a day-to-day basis, right? Let me describe it like this. I have a recurring dream that I've been having for years where I'm walking out in the forest, and it's a totally normal forest. It's just evergreen trees, some ferns, that's it. Totally mundane, totally boring, totally, I mean, I love beautiful and amazing, right? But like mundane, a totally ordinary forest. And then I know I'm looking for something. I'm looking for something more. I'm looking for that magical feeling. I'm looking for the portal to fairy, right? I'm looking for the portal to fairy. That's what I feel like when I'm in these dreams. I'm looking for fairy. How do I find the portal to fairy? Or like the way to Oz. You know, if you've read the Oz books, I barely remember them, but I did read them as a kid. And I know you find the hole, and you go to Oz, right? So I have these dreams, and then suddenly the forest slowly I will see a sparkly mushroom or a purple fern, which don't exist where I live, and the forest just slowly becomes more magical, and the mushrooms become enormous, and it gets so beautiful. Okay, this is when the forest becomes so magical, so beautiful. Everything is sparkling, everything is covered in fairy dust. We got giant glowing mushrooms, and it's just so beautiful. And I usually find myself walking along some type of there's always some type of tunnel. It's like I go down into a ravine, and then I go down, and I just keep following the magic, following the beauty, following the sparkles and the vivid, vibrant colors. And there's usually water, but then I have to find myself going through some type of cave, going into some type of tunnel, right? And it gets like still beautiful and bright, but I can never go all the way, because what's also happening this whole time in the dream is I'm feeling this like crazy vibration. It's like the air just starts vibrating, and I become absolutely overwhelmed. It's like that feeling of magic, that feeling of inspiration, of the feeling of going, like finding the pathway to fairy. At first, it's really exciting and interesting, and it makes you giggle and laugh and skip. But then as I get closer to it, it becomes absolutely overwhelming, and then I start to get scared, and I start to panic, and I start to like become like, and then everything starts rattling, and the whole dream just starts rattling, and I understand that to be like the shift in vibration, right? The shift in density. That's essentially me, in my dream time, trying to transition from the physical 3D realm into those inner spheres, into that different vibration. And it is like, you can move through that, but I think most of us can't most of the time, just because of the sheer intensity of it, and also because the human mind is not used to it, and because the human body isn't normally ready for that. Although some people do, right? Some people do. For the most part, I think most of us do this non-physically, right? In our imagination, in our dreams, in meditation, in trance states, right? We do this energetically, right? That's why it's easier to leave your body behind, so to speak, and to explore the inner spheres non-physically, because trying to take your body along is a lot harder. I've never seen a portal to fairy in the physical. I only see it in my inner vision. But does that kind of describe this? I'm just trying to describe the feeling I have of making that shift in vibration into those other realms, those inner spheres. And so that's how I can actually hold both viewpoints of an absolutely geologic, biological Earth that is physical and mundane, and yet is also filled with the inner Earth landscapes and everything that you might imagine is there. And basically, what I've described, it goes the same way, right? It goes outwards. I don't know if we want to call these the outer spheres, but you know, this first blue line here, that we could call that 4D, just as a shortcut of language, okay? Shortcut of language, call that 4D, and then we could say beyond that would be 5D, again using that the fifth density, this idea of the fifth density, or becoming 5D. It's a shortcut of language. It has meaning, but what does it exactly mean would take a very long time to unpack. You know, now we're going out, and the farther out you go with your vibration, with your awareness, with your consciousness, that is how you can explore outwards what is beyond the earth, and also what is interacting with the earth on more etheric levels or on the astral level, right? This is where I see aliens, okay? This is where I see aliens, but all kinds of mystical, mysterious, and interdimensional and higher beings, right? This is where I see light beings coming in, and you can have archangels coming down. You can have very diffuse blobs of consciousness coming down from 12D way out here, and they're so diffuse, and they maybe can't communicate with us very well, some of them, and they are just collective consciousnesses, right, where the individual has largely dissipated by choice and dissolved into the collective, and this is when you can have light beings and strange higher downloads coming in from these far-flung diffuse layers. But then what happens here, this is the kind of the interesting spot to me. The 5D kind of zone where aliens, right? That's and I mean, I call them aliens because that's fun, and because that matches with our English language, the idea that we have beings out there flying around in spaceships and populating the galaxy, right? Which I've had so many experiences communicating with those beings that is absolutely real to me. So when I'm communicating with an alien, right, a 5D being from another world, do I mean that I literally physically saw a spaceship with my physical eyes? Well, maybe, but usually not. There were a couple of times where I saw objects in the sky that, physically with my physical eyes, looking up at the sky in broad daylight, wide awake, stone cold sober, where I thought that I couldn't figure out what else it could have been. It looked like a UFO, right? It looked like it could have been a spaceship, but I don't know, right? But that was a physical experience I had. But most of the time when I am having a mystical experience of interdimensional communication with an alien being, it is from one of these other layers of density, right? From 5D, 6D, 7D, what have you. And that's very interesting because it is a physical connection, and yet it isn't, right? It's like it is, but it isn't, because it's close enough to our 3D reality that there is still a physical, it feels a little physical, and yet it's not. So I guess, how does this sometimes go for me? Imagine I'm laying in bed at night and my eyes are closed, but I know that my eyeballs are pointed up towards the ceiling, and I'm just imagining looking through my eyelids and through the ceiling and through the roof, and I'm imagining looking up at the stars, and frequently I will see a light ship, right? I will see a light ship, and my eyes are closed, right? But I'm seeing it, and it's hard to describe how real it is, because things get a little bit weird, right? It starts to become a mystical experience. I am still aware of myself laying in my bed, but I am now aware of myself looking up at the stars, seeing a light ship. But I'm aware that I'm not really seeing it with my physical vision, because I know that my eyes are closed in my bed. But it's, my third eye, my inner vision, I am perceiving while I'm lying in bed with my eyes closed, I'm perceiving what's going on in this other vibration, in this other layer, in this outer layer, right? I'm perceiving it bits and pieces, right? It's usually glimpses, and sometimes it's fuzzy and you know, and sometimes it jerks around. It's not super clear, not the way I see it, but I do perceive it. I can see light ships flying around, and it usually then the communication comes through as a download, right? And I always feel really lucky when I get a nice, beautiful glimpse of. There's this one ship that I frequently perceive in that manner, and it's like peachy pink. It's really beautiful, and it's just gorgeous, streaking across the sky. And then I zoom in on it, right? Because that's like. That's what it always feels. It feels like my soul is moving towards it, and I'm like going to merge with it because it is so beautiful, and because I know that those beings are welcoming me in, right? And so that's one way the experience sometimes goes for me. And other times, sometimes when I'm in my house and I might be awake, I might be walking around. Sometimes I walk up to a window and I look outside, and that is when I sometimes different experiences of receiving a communication that it feels like getting hit with a laser beam of information. Imagine some type of technology that could be created physically, but that maybe is beyond current human science, right? Imagine if you could like point an invisible beam at someone and just beam a bunch of ideas into their head, right? That's what it feels like, right? That's what it feels like sometimes when some of these 5D, 6D beings, when they communicate with me when I'm standing by the window or when I'm alone in my room at night, right? It is like a beam. It feels like they're hitting me with a beam, and then I'll get all kinds of glimpses and all kinds of ideas, downloads, information, and I sometimes glimpse what their environment looks like, right? I might glimpse their environment. I might get a glimpse of them, but it's usually flashes. It's usually very fast, and it can feel physical because it can come along with sensations in my head, right? In my forehead, like right where my third eye would be, pressure, right in the middle of my forehead. Sometimes I feel tingling all over my head. Sometimes it's tingling over half of my head. There was one time where I actually almost fainted and I had to like stagger over to a chair. It can be tingles and weird electrical feelings all through my body. My vision can glitch out and can go like really spastic. It can look a lot like, remember old TVs when you get the static, the snow static on old analog TVs, look like that. I hear things. My ears can ring and stuff like that. And the point is that when it's communication coming through from this type of level, it is an interesting blend of there's like a little bit of a physicality to it, and yet it's not literally that the aliens are literally in a physical spaceship right outside my window. I do believe that can happen. I have never experienced that, and it's probably a lot less common because for one of these light ships to actually like fully materialize in our 3D, right, in the pink here, in the red, to fully materialize and like land on the lawn, right? They would have to really, like, they would have to come down in frequency. They would have to come down and descend with their frequency, and they would have to be like specially trained for that, and they would have to like be specially genetically engineered for that, right? It's not if you're from like the fifth layer of density, it would be an entire production. It would be like your entire life's mission, and this is a life that would be extremely long by our counting, to even be able to set foot physically on the earth, the physical earth, the layer of the earth that we are inhabiting, right? The pink layer here, this pink layer. That's where we are, and for the aliens to actually come down. Sorry, every time I say aliens, I feel like I have to laugh at myself. I have to laugh at myself, guys, because like I said, I used to be an atheist, and when I was an atheist, I wasn't just an atheist. I was like a complete hardcore skeptic, and I did not believe literally in a single thing that you could not prove to me with hard science or like physically with my senses, right? So that version of myself sometimes listens to me talk about, getting laser beamed by aliens, and I have to laugh at myself, because it's like, if I don't laugh at myself, it would be like, take me away in the white van and lock me up in the padded room, right? So I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy to laugh when we're talking about aliens, because we're still like living with this. I mean, to a different extent, right? Maybe you don't have any issues with this at all, but I have the atheist hangover and the Christian hangover. I have this double whammy, so I have to laugh at myself because it is fucking funny, right? It is funny. But so anyway, okay, so that aside, what was I talking about? For the aliens, right? The 5D aliens, for them to be able to physically set foot like down here and to bring their ships down here and all of their technology, that is like a whole production. It would be a whole life's mission. And they would have to massively lower their frequency, and like, I don't even know what that would entail, right? But it's like a huge thing. That's why most of them don't do it. And the ones that do come down physically down, like right here into our exact physical reality, they're usually like, they might have already been inhabiting a physical layer of density very, very similar to ours, right? They might be actually not that much more advanced than us in some ways, right? They might be very, like their biology might actually be similar to us from another planet. You know what I mean? I can't really get into the specifics because nobody really knows the specifics, right? I'm just trying to describe this as best I can so that you can get an idea of how some of this might be working, right? Yeah. So, and I guess while I'm on this topic, no, I'm going to save that for another video. This has been more than enough weirdness. There's probably going to be a few more videos of this sort. I'm not really sure why, but stay tuned. There's going to be at least a couple more of these. So I hope you got a little bit of food for thought out of this. And if you are seeking to have more interdimensional experiences of communicating with other beings who are full of friendliness and love for your highest well-being, just put it out there. Just put that intention out there and then wait and see how it comes to you. And if you are seeking to have more communication experiences, the only keys are, first, put out that intention, and then second, to just be open and available to it, to be relaxed, right? You have to be relaxed, you have to be open, you have to stay calm, and you have to say yes, right? Typically, you'll have multiple chances to consent, and if you do something like, if you panic, if you freak out, if you become really anxious, if you become really scared, or if you flail around and move around too much, well, that's how that's how you stop the experience, right? That's how you kick them out, boot them away, all of that, and they respect that. And it also takes you out of you need to be in a kind of calm, open, receptive mindset. So yeah, if you do find yourself feeling the beginnings of a communication experience, and you're wanting to say yes, I'm open to this, I would like to continue with this experience, try to just sit really still. However you're sitting or laying down, just standing, it's fine. Just be really still and just focus on your breath, okay? Just focus as much as you can on just breathing. Just focus as much as you can on breathing, because you don't need to be thinking, right? Thinking will actually stop the experience. You want to just focus on breathing. And if you do have to think something beyond just focusing on your breath, just say yes. Just say yes. Come on in. Yes, I welcome you, right? Just think thoughts like that are consenting, that are welcoming. And, and if you ever are having an experience that you want to stop, typically it's easy to stop them, because most beings don't want to intrude upon you against your will. if you do have some kind of a bad apple that is pestering you, just, you know, close yourself up, get pointed in your mind, you know, take out your sword of no, turn on all the lights, and kick them out, right? It is typically for the vast majority of experiences, at least in my experience and from my personal experience and through talking with many other people, that's how it almost always goes, right? So I don't know. I hope somebody got something out of this, and sending you guys so much love and light. I'll talk to you later. Bye.